Hey guys, Stellar here. Thank you for purchasing my new course. This video is one of many, so strap in, get some good music playing, and get ready to learn. So, let us begin by going ahead and loading in our reference image that we're going to need for the lower. So I'm going to go Shift A, Image Reference, and then I'm going to go to the M4 reference that I have here, and just pick my lower receiver. So, we already know one issue with that. If we don't snap the camera in on a specific angle, it'll just pop it in with the view of the camera. So I was viewing it like this and it's a bit angled. So to fix that, we're going to Control Z. I'm going to snap to the X-axis and do the same process. Load the reference image. And as you can see, it's perfectly straight. So we're going to move this back a little bit there. Go ahead and begin. So I'm going to go into edit mode or X-ray mode, and we're just going to scale this down just a little bit. Scale it up on the Y. I'm going to go into edit mode here and just grab the end, push it all the way to where it needs to be. Same with the bottom. Go ahead and move that over a little bit so you guys can see what's actually going on. So now we're left with this box here. So the first thing I'm going to do is Alt-W to go into Box Cutter. Now if you don't have Box Cutter or Hard Ops, I made a video explaining on how you would be able to follow along. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So with the Box Cutter enabled, we're going to go and make sure our draw surface is on view. And we're going to select N-Gon after we make sure it's on cut mode, which by default it is. So I'm going to select N-Gon here. And we're just going to start going in and chiseling away some of this here. I'm just going to go straight down and hold Shift to complete it because it was a little bit too far over. Move it up slightly, and then we can go ahead and bevel this piece here. Just like so. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and hide this, and we'll move on to our next shape. Our next shape, we're going to go ahead and cut out this little circle here, so I'm going to press D and go to circle. Make sure we have our object selected here. I'm going to draw out the circle about like so, and we're going to hold Shift to keep it live, and we're just going to move it right up into place. So already we do have one issue, but that's an easy fix. You notice how this kind of angles down a little bit. Well, we need that to be flat. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to go into face mode in edit mode here, and we're going to select all of these faces down to here, so basically just half of it, and we're going to move it out on the Y just to prevent that from being at the angle that it was. So we can go ahead and hide this one. Next up, we may need to make the little cut here. So we're going to go back to box. I'm going to start from down here after we make sure our box is actually selected. Draw up from here. And now I'm going to press B just to give it a bevel and send it through. And we're going to go ahead and make sure we're in the right spot for that. Go ahead and hide it. And we're looking pretty good so far. Next up, I'm going to go back to N-Gon and just draw this line after we make sure we have the box selected. Just try to get it as accurate as I can. And go ahead and push that through. So we're starting to get the shape. I'm going to go ahead and press Q. Holding Control, we're going to press Sharpen so that way it applies our modifier. Now, once we've done that, we can go ahead and scale it in just a little bit because we don't need it to be as wide as it is. And we're just going to eyeball this for right now. I know a lot of people are already freaking out that I don't have the scale set up, and that's not the way things are done, but that's the way I get things done. So once we get it about yay wide, and I'll go ahead and bring up my transform menu so you guys can follow along exactly. These are the dimensions so far, which all of this will be changed once we get the rifle complete. So we got this shape here. I'm going to go ahead and add in a cube. Scale it in a little bit. And so what we're doing, and I know it's very hard to see, but with this cube here, I am making it the size of this, and then I'm going to go ahead and extrude it, or not extrude it, but scale it out to where it meets just the edges of these bevels here, as you can see. Next up, I'm just going to apply the scale, go back into edit mode, and then we're just going to grab all 4 of these edges here and give them a bevel. And if you'll notice, the bevel works almost perfectly, and that's fine. This doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to move this down into position, kind of manipulate it a little bit just so we get right about the right shape. And then from here, we're going to discover which faces we need to take. So it looks like we need to take 3. Once we grab those 3, we're going to just extrude them downwards. And instead of those 3, I'm going to grab this 4th one on the right here and just go ahead and extrude it downwards, just so we have that cutout there. And this one's going to be used as a cutter, so we're just going to Q, difference, go ahead and hide it, and we're left with this shape here. Next up, what I'm going to do is we need to start adding the different layers of our weapon. So if we'll notice, this is a different height compared to this, and this is a different height compared to that. So we got this one position here, this one position here, and then this height position here. These are all different heights, starting from the smallest to medium to the biggest. So we're going to start on the medium one, the side panel cut here. Go ahead and grab this and go up to top view. I'm going to add a mirror modifier. Go ahead and sharpen this since we don't need that boolean there anymore. Next up, I'm going to press D, well, Alt W, D. We're going to select box. And then we're just going to cut this ever so slightly like this. Go ahead and move the box to where it needs to be right there. And you can kind of see what we got going on. I know this looks a little bit thin, but trust and believe it is pretty thin on that part of the rifle in real life. So we have this cut going. It does look a little bit on the deep side, so we're going to move it out. But we're going to scale the whole thing in just a little bit. I'm going to Shift A and apply the scale. Go ahead and hide that, and we could sharpen this. So the next thing we need to do is I'm going to grab these right here, this edge, and we're just going to bevel it. We can keep it as thick as we want. It doesn't quite matter, but I want something nice and smooth, and we're going to do like that. So if you'll notice these edges here, that's just because of Box Cutter and Hard Ops doing the sharpening. If you see me occasionally select all, click mark, and then go out of edit mode and sharpen it, it's just because I'm letting Box Cutter add its sharps on it after I take them off, because we don't need those sharps right along there. So that's nice and curved, and as you could tell, slowly but surely we are making some progress. So the reason why I left it so big here is because we need that to start getting in some of our designs. And in fact, we can go ahead and grab this face and move it out just a little bit more so we can get a little bit more working space. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the scale again, sharpen it, just to make sure we're all good to go. And then in areas like this, what we want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and dissolve this edge here. We're looking nice and clean. So next up, what we need to do is start adding in our cuts and everything to get the style on this. So with an AR-15 or an M4, this little, I don't know what you would call it, little ridge area is for finger indexing, both when you have your finger off the trigger and you're laying it across, plus it's just good for muscle memory for the mag release, and it also retains the pin to hold in the takedown pin, both on the front and back here. You can see a little track for a spring and a retainer pin. This right here, like I said, is just muscle memory index point, and on the rear, or on the other side, the left side, there's not going to be any of these index points. There's just going to be a line going up the middle as per standard, and your mag release bar will go across. But I'll have other images showed up or put up for when that time comes. So we're not going to be copying the M4/AR-15 exactly with these types of ridges. I wanted to do more of an aftermarket style, so you'll see what we're about to do. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and apply our mirror since we are no longer going to be needing that anymore. Going to add a bevel just so we can see what we're doing in orthographic mode so we know where we're at. Okay, so we're going to get these going right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a cutter from the bottom left up, just like so, riding along the bottom part of this raised bit, and we're going to extrude it inwards just to about like so. We want to have a nice little step off there, but not too drastic of one. And we're going to leave this cutter here. Next up, we're going to start cutting the cutter. So we want this part here. Chop that through. We need this part here, so we're going to chop that through. And that looks pretty decent. We have our basic setup for that. Next up, we're going to C-sharp we're going to apply the bevels on our cutter there, or the booleans on our cutter there. So we're left with this. I'm going to apply the scale because I messed with that a little bit, and then we're just going to grab these top edges here and bevel them. But we're not going to bevel, it's just going to be a simple chamfer. And we want to make sure we don't have any doubles like that there. So we'll try that again. Go ahead and give it a chamfer like so. And I want the chamfer on the top to match this chamfer here, so we're going to grab these as well after we make sure we don't have any double verts. Just going through and double checking everywhere, and we should be good. So I'm going to grab these edges here. And we're going to give them a quick little chamfer. Something simple like that. Okay. There is that version. We'll go ahead and see what we're looking like here. We're looking pretty toasty. So I can go ahead and hide that cutter. We'll C-sharp it, and then I'm just going to grab this face and kind of push it in a little bit. But before we do that, I want to make sure both of these faces are about the same, so I'm just going to scale them in. Next up, I'm going to grab this edge here, just GG slide it, but it doesn't want to act properly, so instead of GG sliding it, what we're going to do, just grab the edge, GZ, push it up, just like so. Next up, we need to make this little cutout be kind of even with this here. So we need to go back into X-ray, make sure we have the box selected. going to go into End Gun and just kind of cut this out roughly. Cut that out rough, and now we'll go back in with a box. About like so. With that, we're just going to line it up as closely as we can. I'm going to click this and mirror the cutter over. And the same thing with the last cutter. Well, we don't actually need to do that with the last cutter because I went all the way through with it. That one's mirrored. Good to go. Go ahead and hide that one. We're looking pretty snazzy so far. So we're going to go ahead and sharpen it and turn the bevel off so we can see what we're working with here. I'm going to go into edit mode and just start cleaning this up. So I'm going to subdivide this, grab that point, kind of scooch it down, and make sure we're kind of lined up. Go into orthographic view here and get them lined up as much as we can just by visual. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be fixing it here. I'm going to grab this face. I'm going to edit mode just so I can see the dots here. And we're going to grab this face, both of them at the same time, and I'm just going to scale them out on the x-axis to where they line up as best as possible. I can stop messing up my mouse. Just like that. We're going to select all, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. And as you can see, we merged the two verts there. I'm going to go ahead and unmark that sharp line, and we're cooking. So I'm just going to grab these and connect them, and maybe just move this one up here. In fact, we can go ahead and dissolve that edge because it's not really a needed edge, and we'll just go ahead and try these off. Turn our bevel back on, see if we missed anything, which we did on this side. So if we go in here, we'll notice that we got some lines really close but not quite connecting. So for this, I'm just going to join these two fellers together here, grab the bottom edge, and just kind of slide it down, get it out of the way. And that kind of cleaned it up. So we're looking pretty good so far. I can sharpen it. The only issue we do have is a bit of some stretching, but that's just due to because we don't have enough support and love in this lower's life. So I'm just going in and kind of cleaning things up a bit. Making sure everything is good to go. Making sure we don't have any crazy geometry going on. Try that off, or quad that one off. Well, that's not a quad. Now it's a quad. There we go. We're just making life a little bit easier later down the line, getting some good geometry flow. So now we have somewhat of a lower going for us. Next out, I'm just going to cut this bit here. Push it in, hold shift on it, keep it live. I'm going to push it a little bit back. We're going to get out, we're going to go ahead and get rid of our bevel on the box so we can actually see what's going on here. Like the original, we're going to move it as close as possible and go down with it slightly, just like that. Make sure we're nice and in there, and then I'm going to double it up. I'm going to go ahead and take this outer face here, extrude it out just so it does what it needs to, and instead of extruding it out, what we're going to do is just grab it and pull it. So that way it cuts this one properly. And we're left with something like this. Go ahead and hide our cutter. Kind of getting there, looking pretty good. Go ahead and sharpen. So next up we need to work on the left side, because it's looking a bit off center and a bit big, so we need to fix that. So for our left side, we're going to go ahead and hide the first one and snap to the opposite position. Go ahead and grab our Okay, we're looking pretty good so far. So now all I'm going to do is go in and start cleaning up some of this mess. If you'll notice, we have really close geometry. Go ahead and grab these, subdivide it. GG, slide that one over. And I'm just going to merge it last. Do the same thing, merge it last. We'll take this one and scoot it down just slightly to match that one. Go ahead and clean up some of this geometry here. Go ahead and subdivide this one just so we can get a nice loop to connect to here. Press J, just doing some cleanup. Going to subdivide this loop here. Scoot it up a little bit. Subdivide it again. Just adding some connections just to kind of clean up this geometry for later processes. Screwed that one up, so we need to go here, here, and there. Making sure we're all nice and quadded up, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And we're just cleaning up the geometry. Okay, that's nice and fixed. We'll go here and connect that. Here and connect that one. Just kind of cleaning it up, making it nice looking. I did that backwards, but here to here, here to there. We're nice and quadded up. Got some issues with our bevel, so I'm just going to grab this line here, scoot it up a little bit. So if you ever notice these lines here, have no fear, that's an easy fix. All we have to do is just add in a weighted normal and voila, all the stuff goes away. But we're going to add the weighted normal towards the end. So we now have this all cleaned up and connected and everything. We're good to go. It's a nice quad flow. Could be nicer, but it could be worse. So moving along with that in mind, let's just have fun with this. So from here, what we need to do is I'm going to subdivide that, connect a line, kind of scooch it over to where we're nice and straight. And I'm just going to grab this edge and GY, like so. Now we need to work on the back side here. So we have this one all cleaned up, ready to go, ready for action. We need to work on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this version of the lower. We're going to snap our view to this side, and we're going to Shift A, go to Image, Reference, and we're going to pick this lower receiver here, load reference image, and we're going to try to get it as close as we can because they're not the same size. As long as it just about matches up, it doesn't have to be perfect, because we don't need it to be perfect. So that's pretty good. Going to chop it down slightly after we move some stuff out of the way here. So if we'll notice, if we get out of X-ray here and look at it from the back, this side is bigger than this side, and we don't need it to be that way. So the first thing what we can do, go ahead and select the box, draw from the bottom left, and we're just going to chop it off to where it kind of matches, just eyeballing. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the glorious thing about M4s and AR-15s, is the external width can be as wide as you could ever possibly imagine, but the internal width is all that matters. As long as the stuff works on the opposite side, that's all that matters. So now all we need to do is cut the cutter. So we're going to add that line in by just looking at it from the top. Just going to draw in a box, send it through, and look at it from this view until we get it into the right position. Kind of scale it in to get it the proper fit, about like that. And then we're just going to push it to where we get something that we like. Kind of happy with that. Next up, what we need to do is add in the bolt release little lip area. So we're going to look at it from the top again, draw a box. After we Control Z, and after we get our cutter back here, we're going to select the cutter. Just draw in another box, cut it out. Get this one into position, scale it up to where it needs to be. And I'm just going to scale it down. Till we get the proper size. Something like this will work. So we want it sticking out just slightly past the other one. About like that. And now we need to add a line through it, but we will do that in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. Go into orthographic again. Draw another little box to be about the same size as this circle. I'm going to scooch it down to the position it needs to be, scale it in, I'm going to grab this face on the outside and just scale it in to where it's nice and angled. Just like that. Doesn't have to be crazy. Hide that. You can hide that. And now we have this side kind of on the go. So I'm going to go ahead and C-sharp it. Go back into regular view here. Okay, next up we need to just kind of clean these bits up. They don't have to be exactly like our reference because we're making our own. I'm just scaling these in slightly. Scale this one in slightly. We're left with a nice shape. I'm going to go ahead and connect our geometry here. I'm going to subdivide this line. Go ahead and scoot that one way up here. And then I'm just going to connect it to this one. Connect this one to there. And like I said, we're just doing some cleanup for now, trying to make sure our topology's got a nice flow to it to the best of our abilities. Just keeping it nice and clean. So for our trigger guard, I don't want to do the classic trigger guard here with the straight panel. I am going to make this a type of like a unibody, I guess you would call it. Just a nice flat area for our trigger guard. So I'm going to take the front face here and extrude it outwards, kind of scale it in on the Z slightly, and we're just going to push it down. Extrude it, push it down, extrude it, and then extrude it again. SZ. Get that up there. Next up, I'm just going to merge it last here, and it's going to look quite horrible because of our bevel, and we're going to have internal faces, but I'm just going to clean that up. Instead, I know I could have done bridge, but I still would have had to clean up a little bit of geometry. So we're going to do it this way because I've done this a couple of times before, and I know this is the way that works for me. Go ahead and dissolve faces. Just delete the regular faces. We're going to take this loop here, bevel it, get rid of the sharps, bevel this loop, get rid of the sharp, bevel this loop, same thing, and we're going to take this one, bevel it as well. So we're left with a pretty decent shape. I'm going to go ahead and give that a bevel too. Select all, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. It didn't want to do it, so we're going to go ahead and go in there and do it ourselves. Merge it last, at last, at last. We are good. A, mark, sharpen, And we've got our trigger guard going on. Let's turn bevel back on. All right, next up, we need to add our buffer tube screw-in point. I don't know what you would call this. I've never heard this been called anything. I just know the buffer tube screws into that point. So we're going to make it. Going to add in a cylinder, mesh, cylinder. We're going to rotate it 90 on the x-axis. Maybe. RX90. Had to turn my num lock on there. Go ahead and scale it in. Move it to about right here. And I'm just looking at the curvature. I know it's kind of hard to tell with parallaxing and everything, but that's going to be okay. We're just going to kind of wing it here based on what we've been given. So making sure we're in the correct position. I'm going to grab these faces here and just pull them straight down. Scale it in on the X until we're just intersecting the lower receiver, like so. Where we kind of got this little shape going. And then we're going to take our top 4, extrude it upwards, right click, loop tools, flatten. We've got this shape kind of going on now. I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode on this. Just kind of select these faces and we're going to extrude them upwards about halfway up, just so we can have something to cut with. I'm going to grab this, Q, Booleans, Union. Go ahead and hide it, C-sharp it, and I'm going to get to cutting. So the first thing we need to do is chop off the back just a little bit, give us a clean surface to work from. And the next thing we need to do is draw a box in. I'm going to draw kind of a bigger box. Going to bevel it with a pretty decent amount of segments and just push it all the way through and kind of get it right about where we need it to be. So I'm going to go into here to the bevel and just play with it to where we kind of get a similar curve. And due to parallaxing, which this is what happens, we're just going to assume that it's about right. Push it like so. I'm going to increase the segments just so we have a nice smooth transition. And go ahead and hide it. Looks about right to me. I'm going to go ahead and C-sharp it, and now we can go in and do some geometry cleanup. So I'm just going to go ahead and join those two together. Get rid of the extra geometry that we don't need. I'm going to mark this as sharp and just go in and start doing some cleanup. Instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is just get one go across to the bottom here to kind of make it a little bit better, and then we're going to go across here. Just do some cleanup. Go ahead and dissolve that edge since it wants to cause us issues. There. Make sure it's all nice and quadded and tried out. And I'm going to change the bevel from angle to weight, to where it kind of cleaned things up a little bit. And we're going to add a weighted normal just to see how it's treating us, and it's treating us fairly well. The only thing we need to do is kind of do some more cleanup along here. Go ahead and mark that. I'm going to subdivide this and do the same thing on the opposite side. Subdivide just to give us an extra line here. Join that one and join that one so we don't have any strays going across. To go up in orthographic view, K for knife, click, make sure we press Z and C to lock it, and we're just cutting through the mesh. Just giving us a line straight through the middle, something to work and jump off from, all that good stuff. Join it. Join it. I'm going to grab these top faces here and just kind of scoot them back down a little bit and scale it in slightly, just like so. We're left with a pretty decent lower receiver for an AR-15/M4. Now we can add in this little piece here. That's going to be a tremendously easy piece. We're going to go into Box Cutter, select Make Box, and N-Gon. Just going to draw it how I see it. Flat across and up. Just going to make our piece here, about like that. And we're just going to Operations, Booleans, Union. Go ahead and hide it and C-sharp it. So this gives us some jump off points for our geometry here. Go ahead and connect it in. We either want quads or tris, it doesn't really matter, just as long as we got some support and love going on for the geometry here. Nice and cleaned up. Going to go ahead and take these two edges here, subdivide them. That way we have a jump point for these here. Same for this side. J. J. We got this quad here, that quad there. Join them. Join them. We need to do some cleanup here. J. And we're having a bit of an issue because of overlapping geometry. We can go ahead and fix that at last. We'll do the same with this one here, M at last, and then we'll add a support there and a support there. Just joining them across. It's free real estate. I'm going to grab these edges here. Go ahead and subdivide it. J. And like I said, we're just going through and cleaning some stuff up. J. I'm just going to grab this and dissolve the edges there. We're going to do the same on this side here. Don't need these doubles either, so I'm going to go ahead and dissolve that edge. Same thing as the other side, grab these and subdivide it. And we're just going to clean it up still. So we're all nice and cleaned up. We do have this line here that we can just move. Give these some love and support in their lives. Make sure we're all nice and clean, which we are. Gonna do some cleanup on this. Doesn't like being cleaned up that way, so we're going to do it a different way. Get that all nice and clean. We have a nasty little jumbled mess here. M last, easy fix. J. And we're going to do the same type of cleanup to the other side. I won't bore you guys with all the semantics. It's easy cleanup. Basically, you just want to make sure you have all of this nice and ready to go for next steps, because N-Gons can be a nightmare, and I know you guys want to see this game ready. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the rest. If you need to, you can slow down the video, but I'm just going to speed this up because it's pretty much the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, once we get to this point, now we can start adding in the booleans to cut the holes and all that good stuff. So make sure you're saving periodically. I'm going to go ahead and save mine, and we're also going to duplicate this before we start making more cuts into it. So once we have it saved, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to M4 underscore lower underscore high. And we're just going to duplicate it, leave it in spot, and hide it. So now with this one, we can bring in our reference image. We'll go ahead and do this one. So we got 5 main holes that are going to be the same completely through, and then one hole that's going to be different on one side versus the other. So we're going to go ahead and get our 5 main holes in. Go ahead and make sure your object is selected. I'm going to first press D, go back to cut mode, and then circle. And we're just going to draw them out, cut them, and move them into place. Cut it. Cut it. And then we're going to hold this one because we need to do some stuff with it. So I'm going to add a loop cut in, bring it all the way up and to about right here. And then we're going to take this, ES Shift X, extrude it out to about like so, and I'm just going to push it in a little bit more. Take this face and just make sure it's all the way out. We can push it in, go ahead and sharpen it, make sure we're good. I'm going to take this entire loop and just push it in a little bit more to make the bevel stop freaking out. And we've got our holes in so far. So one of the biggest things is we're going to have a lot of cleanup to do. And it's just because of situations like this. There's nothing really we can avoid on it. So we need to move on for it. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab the edges that are being the worst offenders and get rid of them so we can kind of see what we got going on here. And see where we need to start connecting some of these lines. Just going through and connecting all the lines here. We can leave n-gons like this, but I would prefer not to. Go ahead and skip one. J. As you can see, our bevel is giving us a bit of an issue, so I'm going to go ahead and dissolve that. Skip one. Like I said, we're just going through and kind of cleaning things up a bit. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this. Do the same on the other side because I know we're going to need it. Go ahead and subdivide both of these. We'll do them twice. I'm going to connect the lines on the underneath so we don't have to deal with more n-gons later. And just continue our connection process. Make sure our bevel isn't freaking out too much as it is here. Go ahead and dissolve that just to clean it up a bit, make it a bit more happy with it. And with this, I'm just going to go straight across back to this circle, skipping one. Like I said, we're just going through and cleaning up the geometry, trying to contain possible n-gons and all that good stuff. Going to take this edge and subdivide it just so we can get a little bit of help. J, skipping one, J, and we're going to go from this point down to this point, J. Do one down the middle as well. Make sure our bevel's still alive and happy. J. And from here, I'm just going to connect that just to make it happier. I'm going to scoot these two. Okay, we're cooking so far. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this once more. Move them over and connect them. Nice and clean, getting there slowly but surely. And if you want to avoid such cleanup, then you can always just use less verts in a circle. But like I said, this is going to be our high poly model. Make sure when you go through this right here, just make sure you don't have any doubled up or end guns, especially in the ring. So I'm just scooting them over, merging them at last. Nice clean geometry so far. We're getting places really fast. This is going to be pretty much the most time-consuming part of this entire build, minus the substance painting. And in fact, what I'm going to do is go ahead and subdivide this one more time, and we're going to dissolve that edge and start making some triangle madness from here. So we do have double lines here. I'm going to go ahead and dissolve that edge. Instead of doing that, since it's connected on the outside, what we need to do is just go ahead and scooch this one and put a support into there. Make sure we have all of these. And I'm going to go through this side and not put you guys through the pain of doing it all and speed it up for you. Okay, once we've reached this point here, we can go ahead and add in our little hole for the takedown pin on this side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle here to make it the same size as the other one. And I'm going to go ahead and move it to the correct position. Make it a slight bit smaller. About like so. We'll go ahead and sharpen it. Go into edit mode and we can go ahead and start connecting some of this here. Solve edges. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide this edge loop here where it gives us an extra point. Going to go ahead and subdivide this loop as well. Make that point jump in there. So that way we can move this edge back just a bit. Go ahead and connect that. And if you'll notice, it's getting a little bit ugly. It's because I have the bevel turned off, just so we can see our geometry a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on. We can kind of knock our bevel back just a little bit, and instead of knocking the bevel back, I'm going to go ahead and grab this right here and just push it back slightly. Alright, we're good to go on that. Next up, what we need to do is go ahead and cut in the mag release on this side. So we're going to go ahead and open up the left side of the receiver, the left side view, just so we can get our cut right. Go to D, select box, And we're just going to draw in a box about yay long. Go ahead and bevel it. Push it through, line it up a little bit. And I'm just going to scoot it out and over. Just kind of line it up a little bit, you know, get everything situated and prepared and ready to go. And we're going to take a look at this bevel here and kind of bump down the segments to something a bit more manageable. And I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and just push it down ever so slightly and hide it. And we can C-sharp it. Notice that it's been applied. And we're going to go in and clean up some of this mess in here. But I didn't like how that turned out, so I'm going to go ahead and unapply that. And we're going to grab this face and just push it inwards just a little bit. Have mine slightly different than that M4 there. Go ahead and hide it, sharpen it, and do some cleanup on it here. Subdivide these two. In fact, we're not going to go ahead and subdivide that. I'm just going to leave it as an N-gon here. It's going to be more than fine. Going to turn off our bevel real quick and do some good old-fashioned connection activity on the inside here. Turn back on our bevel, and we are looking pretty good. Next thing we need to do is add in our little cut for the bolt release. Go in, draw a box, bevel it, push it all the way through, get it to the right position that we need it. Take a look at our bevel and crank down the bevels because we don't need that many. Go ahead and do 4. And I just closed the bevel off because it's got the weld modifier on it. We can push this back to where it needs to be. Something like that works. Hide it. Sharpen it. And we'll go into edit mode. Pretty much do the same type of cleanup. Make sure we grab our lines here. Mark them like we want them. Alt V, looking at the wireframe, making sure our bevel's not all jacked up. And we're good to go on that. Let's turn our bevel back on and see if we're looking good, which in this case we are. Next up, we need to add a type of a mag flare. So I'm going to go in, add a cube, and to Control Z, Shift S, we're going to snap the cursor to world origin. Shift A, add in a cube, scale it down, scale it in, and I'm going to try to get this to match the angle that we have here so far, about like so. And we're just going to push it in and up. Going to grab this top face, scale it in. Push this one. Going to grab this and pull it forward like so, just where it's barely inside the other one. And we're going to grab the front one and push it out a decent amount and up. Kind of make it match. Going for that extended magwell type look. Q, booleans, union, and we can C-sharp it. Then go into edit mode and do some cleanup. So we want this edge to match this edge, so we're going to do it last. This edge to match that edge at last. And in fact, we're going to do it in the opposite direction. So I'll take this one, do it towards the bottom at last. Bottom at last. GZ. Kind of get that one situated. About the same type of angle. We're going to grab this entire edge perimeter here. Mark it sharp, and we're going to turn our bevel off so we can do the cleanup that we need to do. Like this edge here, we can go ahead and join it. Go ahead and turn our bevel on and see what we're looking like. We're looking pretty decent. I'm going to just continue to do some cleanup here. And we can take this edge and mark it as a sharp. See why we have an issue going on here. Go into wireframe. We don't have an issue. It's just shading kind of funky, but that's okay. Go back into edit mode and we realize we have a monstrosity going here. Merge that at last. Merge that at last. Turn back on our bevel and we are looking pretty nice. Okay, this is going to be an easy fix. We're going to take this line here and just move it down slightly. And instead of doing that, we already know that we have what we want. So I'm going to subdivide it and subdivide it again. Instead of subdividing it, I don't know what I did there. So we're going to try that again. Make sure we got just 3 of them, and then I'm going to subdivide it again. Merge that one at last. Merge this one at last. Do the same thing. We're all nice and connected. Excellent. So we can grab these outer edges here and bevel them if we want, or chamfer them rather, to give us a bit more of a nice look. Take these edges, mark them sharp, so we have a nice flared magwell going. And then we can take this inside, inset it, and extrude it upwards. I'm just moving it, scaling it on the Y just a little bit to kind of get up in there the way we want it to be. Back down a little bit. So now we have our magwell. And the lower receiver is almost finished. We just need to add in a few more things, and that's going to be the little stopper position switches there. So to do this, I'm going to add in a cube. Scale it down to be where we want it. I'm going to grab the picture and kind of line things up just so we can get it the way we want it. Move it to here. Scale it in on the X. And for what I'm going to do here is just something simple. We're going to take the cube, move this face down like so, and then we're going to scale it in on the Y. And we're just making a shape kind of like this. Move it out a little bit. We're going to duplicate it and move it over to the other side as best as we can. Join them together. Q, booleans, union. Go ahead and C# it and just do the cleanup that we need to do. So I'm going to take these faces as we realize they are a little bit on the small side. We're just going to take the tops and scoot them up like this. And we have a bit of an issue, so I'm just going to Control Z it. Move this one down to there at last. Go up just slightly because the bevel was kind of eating them. Connect them in like we normally would. We can leave that end gone there. At last. At last. Just clean them up. Just going to knife that in there. Merge them like so. And now we have our safety switch stoppers and a almost complete lower receiver. So another thing that we need to do to make this a bit more complete is we can just add a little slot for where the trigger is going to be, and then we will be done with our lower receiver after we add in the slot for the trigger and the mag release slot. So I'm just going to go in, add a cube, scale it down, scale it up on the Y slightly. GZ, GY, and we're just going to difference boolean that, sharpen it, go into edit mode, realize that we screwed up. So I'm going to grab this and move it forward, then difference it, sharpen it, and we're just going to take this edge here, right on the line, and we're just going to scoot it up. Join those. We're all nice and quadded out, and we have a area for our trigger to go. One more thing. I'm going to go in the front here and just bevel them one time. Just a nice little chamfer. Take that edge and mark it sharp. Take these edges and unmark them. We notice we have a bit of an issue there, but we can easily fix this. That fixed the bevel for us. Now we have an area for our trigger to go out. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that since we don't need it anymore. We're going to bring back our empty for this side. And all we need to do is draw in a box, bevel it slightly, push it through, and I'm going to go into X-ray view just to make sure we got it the right size. And we did. So I'm going to push that back about like so. We don't need it to be super deep. I'm going to go in on this bevel and change it back down to something more manageable like 5. We can hide it, C-sharpen it, and go in and do some cleanup. So we can go ahead and get rid of this edge. Go in like so. Can even connect that there. And then I'm going to connect these. Okay, we're all nice and connected. I'm going to turn off the bevel and just go in and do what I normally do and clean these up. Prevent the N-gons from doing what they like to do. As we see, that edge caused an issue. Get out of edit mode, and our lower receiver is pretty much completely done. You can see sharpen it, and you can move on to the next part, which is going to be the upper receiver.